All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody out there in my fitness and health investment initiative, I Motivate Me community? I thought I'd check in. It's been a little while, and I've been engaged in a lot of things, kind of immersing myself into the various projects that I've had um, that I've kind of found myself having lost a little bit of organization, a little bit of focus. And so sometimes you need a little space and a little silence to kind of recalibrate your organization, where your energy's going with the things you want to do, and move forward, right? So when we move forward with that purpose in life, whether we get sidetracked or whatever the case, whatever we have going on, we bring ourselves back in. Sometimes we have a lot of noise in life, and sometimes you create a lot of that noise. And it's important to kind of bring yourself back into what it is you're actually doing. And so I thought it'd be a good chance to come on and just, when you recalibrate yourself, get back to the basics of why it is that I created I Motivate Me, what it is, where it comes from, why I call it my fitness and health investment initiative. And I'm going to go ahead and talk off the cuff here just to get back to basics. Why it is that I do the projects that I do, as long as it takes me to do them. I put a lot of things on my plate, and I just don't organize very well sometimes. I'm a one-man show, and there's no excuse. But we put a lot of things together. I have a lot of ideas, and when you wake up the way that I did, everybody has their own wake up. Everybody has their aha moment about life at one stage in their life or another. And mine just happened to come after a major failure in my life. And I want to talk about that briefly. As I grew up as a child, I didn't have a father in the household. All right. And so all of my life, even when he was in my world, the things that Jeremy Watts did as a child, playing football from the time I was 5 years old, I was always active outside. I usually ran around with the big boys. And so that led me to being exposed to a lot of things in terms of having to be the little one competing with older boys. So I learned at a very early age about boundaries, all right? And what happens when you decide to confront things and you're the little one out there. Sometimes you're going to get put in your place. And I grew up tough, right? And I'm very thankful for that. I feel like being a Marine for a long time, multiple combat tours, that's one of the things that brought me home alive. Now, I try not to wear that on my sleeve. That's a part of my accomplishments in life, and I forget that sometimes, and that has everything to do with what I'm talking about here, because nothing was ever good enough in my father's eyes, according to me as a child. And so I grew up remembering that stuff. And so at times in relationships or just in life in general, for teachers, you're seeking validation, right? You join extracurriculars outside of school. You want to do well, but you find yourself living in anxiety when you have things around you that you see other people are conforming to. You know that something's not right in the world. I always felt like I was born into this world, not to be a pessimist about the world, but the world is not well. It's a broken world. Things are not as they seem. And I started to recognize that, hey, people are conforming to a lot of really bad habits and doing a lot of bad behaviors, and this is not good and it's not sustainable. I thought this stuff as a child, right? And being the older brother of two younger siblings, you have a lot of responsibilities as a kid, especially when there's no father in the household. Whether people realize it or not, there's a lot of pressure placed on that child. Now, getting older, you have relationships, you care about people, you want to see people succeed in life. You end up breaking hearts, or you get your heart broken, and you get tired of failed relationships. You get tired of certain failures. No matter what you do, the good things far outweigh, according to everybody else outside looking in, to everybody else, they'd be like, Jeremy, man, you've done a lot of crazy stuff. You've done a lot of great things. Here you are today. Look what you're doing. You know, good for you, man. I'm happy for you. You're doing great. To me, inside, my failures far outweigh anything that I've done positively. And it's held me back over the course of my life. And there came a point where, and I remember specifically being 34 years old, having a failed romantic relationship, and rightfully so, I left the relationship. But I nurtured an environment that allowed certain things to transpire. And I decided to take responsibility for it. Instead of resenting, being angry, I started to realize that I was tired of not controlling my emotions. I was tired of being the little anxious one running around. Mr. Big Boy Jeremy Watts, combat veteran, so on and so forth, running around and not controlling my emotions. And so I wanted to learn how to do that. And so I started living through these ideas. I sobered up. I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped doing whatever. I was abstinent from sex. I was doing all kinds of things that I needed to do. I felt I needed silence in my life, and I needed to let myself feel a little silence, which that silence is actually deafening, and it's loud, and it's painful at times when you're trying to take responsibility for a lot of things. So that means you have to go back and reflect on a lot of things. And even in those reflections, you never fully forgive yourself. It seems like there are always those things that are still, even though you've confronted them, you still feel like you're not worthy to move on and move forward in life. And so you work on those things. And I created I Motivate Me because I saw that the system was inequitable. It is in fact broken. And the real inequity comes from ignorance and people not understanding the way that broken homes lead to the behaviors and the emotional instability that we carry in ourselves, and that we project those insecurities onto other people. We're just projecting to each other, and it leads to a lot of poor relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, business relationships, whatever the case. We get lost in the external stuff that we conform to. And so I started to say, look, man, what can I do with compensation that I receive from I Motivate Me? I can start counseling people and coaching people one-on-one, which is what I did. I did it for free for years. I created the foundational principles of I Motivate Me. Now, one that's missing is going to be integrity, which I'd like to add I've been working on. But I talk about them on the website. These were my principles that I felt I could start to develop with virtues and with building self-respect, self-love, and self-dignity that I didn't have from that father figure, you understand, that you end up having to validate from outside, right? So I wanted to know how, I wanted to learn how to control those emotions and thus be a more secure person. That's part of the reason why I created I Motivate Me. It's not just about the push-ups, the pull-ups, the crunches, the physique. It's a mind, body, spirit approach, and you cannot have one without the other. And when you look back at the failed marriages, 50+% of American households are divorced. And you have a lot of the younger generations believing that the nuclear family was the toxic environment. No. It was the culture, and it was the social constructs that came with your TV set, that came with the things that we were exposing ourselves and our children to with screen time, which you see today. So how is it that those things control our emotions and thus can predict our behavior? That behavior is key, and that's why I started to invest time in understanding the human mind and looking deep within. And so anytime something goes on in your life, you have to take a step back and you have to be silent. Now, of course, I talk a lot, and often that's simply a sign that you feel like you are not being heard. You're coming from a place of lacking. You're not coming from a place of stability. There's something going on to where you feel like you have to over-explain yourself. You have to over-post. And I've talked about this before in a previous video. I started to develop these foundational principles that you can use and rely on in times when you need to consolidate. And in doing so, we must realize that it's important to develop boundaries. So I learned boundaries outside with the big boys, but intimately, those boundaries were not established. You leave your energy open. You over-explain, you leave your energy open for others to judge, for others to be exposed to. What happens to that energy? It dissipates. Now you lose organization. Now you lose focus. These were the things that I was thinking about with the foundational principles. So you can rely on those foundational principles even in times where you need to sit back and relax and think and be in a little silence.